Welcome to After the Headlines. I'm Sarza, and today I want to step back from the breaking news cycle and spend some time with a difficult question. How does a crowd become a mob, especially in places where inequality is deep, institutions are fragile, and politics runs through networks rather than systems? Because when mob violence erupts, whether in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Myanmar, or even parts of the United States or Latin America, the instinct is to frame it as criminality, extremism, or mass hysteria. But political scientists and sociologists have long argued something more uncomfortable. Mob violence is not an accident of behavior. It is evidence of a system that people no longer trust. So today I want to unpack that carefully and analytically, but also honestly. So what political science means by mob culture? In social movement theory, mob behavior is often seen as collective action outside formal institutions. It emerges when people believe that courts won't protect them, due process is inaccessible, decisions are made through power, not fairness, and grievance has nowhere legitimate to go. So the street becomes the court, emotion becomes evidence, numbers become legitimacy. And this doesn't only happen in poor societies. It happens anywhere institutional trust collapses. For example, when lynch mobs surged in the American South, it wasn't because courts didn't exist. It was because courts were not trusted to deliver racial justice. In India and Sri Lanka, anti-minority mob attacks rise sharply during periods of polarization and political patronage, not because prejudice suddenly appears, but because institutional guardrails weaken. And in Bangladesh, incidents of mob violence, whether around rumors, political protests, or moments of social panic, often occur where formal authority has already lost legitimacy. So the question shifts from why did people become violent to why did people feel the formal route no longer mattered? One of the most useful ideas here to explore is relative deprivation. It doesn't mean poverty increases, therefore violence increases. It means that violence increases when expectations rise faster than opportunity. Think about urban Bangladesh over the last decade. Luxury malls, high-rise apartments, imported cars, private education, expanding wealth for a small group of people, existing side by side with wage stagnation, graduate underemployment, rising food and rent costs, unequal access to legal protection. So structurally, the message becomes, there is opportunity, but not for you. That disconnect builds resentment, not just at poverty, but at unfairness. We've seen similar trends in Brazil's favelas, Cairo during the Arab Spring, and in parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Mob activity doesn't rise simply where people are poorest. It rises where inequality becomes visible and mobility feels blocked. This is why looting, crowd action, or vigilantism are not only acts of greed or aggression, they are also symptoms of a broken moral economy. In Muslim-majority countries like Bangladesh, religion sometimes becomes a mobilizing language. This doesn't mean religion causes violence. It means that religion provides shared symbols, it gives moral meaning to emotion, it frames injustice through faith, and it creates rapid collective belonging. In Myanmar, Buddhism played this role. In India, Hindu nationalism often does this. In parts of Africa, Christianity does. In Iraq or Lebanon, sectarian identity does. The pattern is consistent. Identity offers cohesion, but the feel is still exclusion and distrust, not religion itself. To really understand mob culture in South Asia, you also have to look at patronage politics. When access to opportunity depends more on who you know than what you deserve, citizens stop behaving like equal members of a republic. They behave like clients in a hierarchy. And in such systems, parties cultivate street power, loyalty is rewarded, intimidation substitutes for policy, and law enforcement can be selective. So crowds sometimes become political theater, a way to signal strength or moral authority. Other times they form organically, but they grow in a context where institutions are not trusted to contain them. This is why research shows that mob violence spikes during political uncertainty and transitions, because when the center weakens, the street fills the vacuum. Another crucial component is rumor. When formal information channels are weak, WhatsApp forwards, loudspeakers, street gossip, and social media posts become primary sources of truth. Across South Asia, Africa, and Latin America, researchers have tracked cases where false allegations, often involving religion, morality, or honor, spread faster than police verification. And when trust in police is already low, people act before checking. Rumor becomes a trigger only because trust had already eroded. Now I want to pause here, because nuance matters. To analyze mob culture is not to justify it. Minorities who are attacked, journalists who face intimidation, women and vulnerable people trapped in fear, they deserve safety and justice. We deserve safety and justice. But justice begins with truth. And the truth is, mob violence grows where institutions fail and where inequality becomes unbearable. If we respond only with policing or moral condemnation, we treat the symptom while the disease deepens. So here are some core questions political science pushes us to ask. Has institutional trust declined? Are courts perceived as fair or biased? Who benefits from instability? What identity narratives are leaders amplifying? How visible is inequality and who is excluded from mobility? What triggers rumors and why are they believed? Are there meaningful channels for grievance that don't involve the street? Because mob culture is rarely spontaneous. It is produced by systems, incentives, neglect, and power. So when we see crowds turning violent, instead of only asking, why did these people do this, we need to ask, what kind of political and economic order made the crowd feel like this was the only way to be heard? Because safer societies aren't built only through security. They're built when justice arrives before anger, information outruns rumor, minorities feel protected, religion isn't instrumentalized, and dignity doesn't depend on patronage. In other words, when people feel like citizens, not clients, not spectators, and not disposable,